Hey guys, in this tutorial I want to show you how to create a map for Supreme Commander Forged Alliance with AI support. We use Softimage to model and create a height map. Weld Machine to add erosion to this height map and to create masks for faster texturing. The Supreme Commander map editor for putting everything together, adding textures and to add props like trees and rocks. Finally, we will use the marker editor to add spawn points, rush areas, mass fields and AI markers. For those who are not familiar with Softimage, I added a keystroke visualizer here in the bottom left corner, so you can see which button I pressed. We start with creating 3 planes. That's a polymesh grid. So the first one is for the 0 level. Then we duplicate that, move it up a bit. That's the water level. We duplicate it again and that's the upper level. So we call that level 1. Now we move everything in the correct position. So this should be on 1 unit and this water level should be on 0.196. So that's exactly where the water level is in the Supreme Commander editor. So I hide the grid here. I give the water a blue color. And for now I'll hide the top layer. And start modeling the terrain. Start with a simple cube. Set that to 1 unit. So I put it here on this side and afterwards it gets mirrored on to the right side. I duplicate the polygon and move it to the proper position. I duplicate these 2 polygons, move it forward. Okay, that's good. So I want this to be the beach area. So I move the top part down till the water level, just a bit higher. Then I want to elevate this middle part. So here we have the beach. And I want that every player is also elevated on this piece here. So the first player is deeper than the last player. Okay. So I make another poly mesh on top of that. get an idea of the positions. So here we have the 4 players, and I stretched it out to get the correct positions on the terrain mesh. I use Lattice for that. I freeze the mesh so it stays in position. And now I can delete the lattice. Move that up so I see where I am. So player 1 should be somewhere here. Player 2. Three. And number 4. Okay, that's great. And now I can see here this should be a little bit more elevated. This the last one. Okay. And this I don't need anymore. And I also want that the players can go down here, so I build ramps. And I also want to have a beach here in front. Okay. So to build the ramps, I have to add here another splitting. Let's say, so it's not so steep. Put the line here, the edge here. Then I delete these polygons here. And start building the ramps. So this very last is already very steep, and since we have space here, I will add another edge split here. Let's say here. and I weld this point to here and here. Okay, and close the, let's see that the gap. Okay, that's better. I will move these guys here forward. Split again. I might call this my terrain. Okay, that looks not so bad. Maybe we also elevate this piece here. And let's add a little ramp here as well. Okay. Now I move the center to 0. That should be 0 in X, Y, and Z. Then I delete the polygons on this side. So I can mirror it. But first I have to also add ramps here. So the players can help each other. Let's say here. Here. Let's do it in the middle. Okay, that looks good. Okay, we freeze that whole modeling stack. and say symmetrize polygons. Everything looks okay. Freeze it again. Okay. And now we mirrored it on the Z axis. Freeze again. And in the middle I want to have a small bridge on each side. So I delete this polygons. Let's delete those. And these two guys we move until here. Now delete. And we weld it. So now everything should be welded. In the middle here I don't want to have deep water, so I split here again. Delete. I select two edges and say bridge boundary point edges and let it grow. Good, so the next step is to add two polygons to this terrain mesh. It defines the range for the height map generation, and that's a very important step. So extract here one polygon, or better duplicate it. Doesn't really matter how big this polygon is, as long as it's 1 pixel in size on the map. So I move this down to 0. Then I duplicate it again. And they should not overlap. So when you look from the top camera view, you can see this and this polygon. This I move up to 1. So this defines completely white, and this defines completely black, and the rest of the terrain is in between. Okay. Looks good. Both are in the correct position. Now the next step is we use this plane to project the terrain onto it. So it needs a texture projection for that. So I add a planar texture projection in X and Z. It's like X and Z here. So here and here. So now we see here the texture support. That's the green line. You can freeze that. And I check if the texture is correctly, if the UVs are correctly applied by pressing Alt and 7. It fills out the complete texture space, so that's okay. Next step is to give this the Ultimapper property. Ultimapper. And here I pick the high resolution source, so that's our terrain mesh. Terrain. Next is I set the path where I want to save the map. Next is the prefix, so it should be called Heightmap. The image file format should be TIFF 16-bit. That's important, 16-bit, not 8-bit. Next is I want to have only the depth information. Resolution for a 20 by 20 kilometer map is 1024 by 1024. Quality is of course highest. And here compute is nothing else than a check that checks distance to surface should be 0 here. So that's, if that is our surface, the plane number 1, plane 1 is our surface, so the distance to surface should be 0. So that's represented by this polygon, and depth range is represented by this polygon, and that should be from here to here 1. So I compute that. So, and here we get 0, that's okay. Here we get 1, that's also okay. It's not exactly 1, but I don't know, it's just like that always. But that's the correct result. If you have a different result here, then there is definitely something wrong, and the values that I mentioned for water height and everything else will not match in the end. So that has to be correct. So now I press generate to render out the height map. Okay. And now I check how the height map looks like. Looks pretty okay. In the next tutorial I will show you how to import this map into World Builder, how to add erosion to it, and how to create masks for the texturing process in the Supreme Commander map editor. Thanks for watching.